Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fruitful Trees, and I'm so excited. One of the things that I get to do is travel all over and interview people that know about fruit trees. And one of the most popular fruits and fruit trees we have here in South Florida today are mangoes. And it's almost mango season. Today it's a very clear day, but recently it was very windy, and mangoes were blowing all over the place. Some were blowing off the tree. Well, I got a special video for you today. I got to interview Walter Zill. Now, those of you that know the Zill family, they're one of the most popular families in propagating different types of mangoes and mango varieties over the years. And there's a man named Gary Zill that has a whole program about the different new mangoes that are out today that he worked so hard to label and get. But his brother Walter Zill, who grew up with their dad, who taught them all about mangoes and things like that, has amazing knowledge, and he has about an acre where he lives with some of the oldest mango trees you'll find with some great history. He also has a book. I highly recommend his book. I'll put a link below the video that talks about the history of many of the popular common mangoes that are out there today. So today's interview is with Walter Zill. Check it out. If you want to buy mangoes from him, he does sell them during the season, but you have to call the number below to make sure he has, because he doesn't want anyone to waste their time and come out if they don't have mangoes. But he had some great information to share. I've done a lot of videos. This was one of my favorite, and check it out now. Here it goes.
Walter. I'm Walter Zill, and I'm here to tell you some things that concern me, and it has to do with the time of when you might expect mangoes. I cannot predict that any more than I can predict the coming of Christ. He comes when the time is right, when the harvest is ripe, and we here prefer to have our mangoes mature on the tree before we pick them. But when we have windstorms come through and they take the fruit that are nearing maturity and waste them, it's wasted, and I don't have fruit to sell. I don't know, within the last hour we had strong wind come through here that knocked down some fruit that I picked up here. I'm not sure if you want to show these on the video. They look nice and full, but I know good and well when they get soft, they're not going to have the flavor that people are looking for in there. And the way we tell, when we find fruit that have dropped or been blown down that ripen and are good, then we can feel confident in selling fruit that are mature. But until that day comes, we just wait and see. And we lost a lot of fruit here a few minutes ago that
Are they some different various trees or one particular tree?
well, these came from one tree, this from another tree, and I haven't even gone around and picked up from others, but I'm sure there are others. These came from a tree that's I only have one tree of it, and earlier in the season I had a lot of fruit that were getting this size, and there in March the wind took all my fruit that were of this size. Well, some of them laid down there and done their thing. You can tell that fruit's no good. And even at that size, it was only half grown. That would have been a giant, nice size fruit. But when we have a wind that comes through and steals them when they're this size, there's no chance of getting them big.
Now, there are some people that pickle mangoes. So would this be good for those people that pickle mangoes?
The people who pickle mangoes are particular. They might like that kind, they might not. Usually they prefer kit. And this would be a good time of year to start getting the pickling mangoes that are so young that you can slice through the whole fruit and find that the hull around the seed is no resistance to cutting. You can cut them through. And yet other people want fruit that have a seed that's more developed and just have pulp that's still firm and white. So there'll be fruit of that available. But generally, I don't like to pick that myself because I'm waiting for mature fruit to ripen. And what else?
So with the wind, the disadvantage of the wind is this: it can knock off your fruit. But from a mango disease standpoint, is the wind beneficial or is it worse when it's windy out?
Well, I think it's worse. The wind can carry whatever it is that causes the bacteria to grow on trees. It can be windborne, and it also grows more readily in moist conditions with rain, so it's a detriment.
Okay. And of course, the bigger the tree, the more it's going to be bothered by the wind usually.
Yes, right.
So that's an advantage to try to keep them a little smaller.
That's right. And my trees are not a little smaller. Most of my trees are too big. And I've actually started taking out some trees that are just too big to pick.
Yes. So can we see the size of some of your trees maybe?
Sure.
And the different varieties? And
sure.
I know you were showing. So tell us about some of your common varieties that you have here and how long have you had them? What's your oldest tree on this property?
I guess the oldest tree is some kits that I have, and we can go walk and see them. And I've grafted a lot of them. I have some large they were kits that I've grafted to Pickering, and they've got a lot of fruit, but it's up in the very tops.
It's hard to get up there.
Well, yeah, well, that's why we use really long pickers. But I don't expect those fruit until the end of June or sometime in July, actually, because this year it's an extremely different blooming season. We had bloom that came on first part of December from early cool spells, and then we had later bloom, and most of the little fruit on the trees now are later bloom. That's going to be in at least June before they're ready. Most of it will be more into July.
So does that mean the season will be later towards the end?
I think so, but who knows what wind is going to come.
Depends on the wind and other factors. All right, well, show us some of the older trees that you have here, and maybe some of the new varieties you got growing on here.
All right, you want to? Yeah. Let's go out where it is.
And for everybody that's watching, they have mangoes for sale here. When the season is available, they have mangoes here for sale.
That's right, but try and call first. Our number here is 561-737-9419.
Now, how often do you trim the trees here?
Let me put it this way. The best time to trim your mango trees is right after you harvest the fruit. If you can take back a few feet on the limbs from which you pick your fruit, and do that every year, considering that harvest time, right after you take the fruit off. I can't do all of that at the time being, and sometimes I end up just deciding I don't need this tree and I'll take it out by the roots, even if it's a big tree.
Wow. Now, why would you take a tree out by the roots as opposed to just top working it?
Good question. How best can I answer that? Well, for one thing, on your big trees that get up like they're 30 or 40 feet high, almost impossible to get any fruit out of the top of them. If you start cutting them back and getting shoots coming out and graft onto those, it takes about 3 years for those shoots to grow and get in an equilibrium balance with the root system. And by the time that has happened, they're giant trees again. And it is really disappointing. I could show you. Let's go out this way.
Sure.
And show you an example.
Okay, so this is an acre.
This is this tree we're passing by here is a cherry.
That's a cherry tree. How old would you say this one is?
Well, that was grafted on a kit tree that was planted in 1955. At the time it was planted, it was a Kent. But in about 1970, I grafted it to kit. And later, sometime in the 1990s, I grafted it to cherry. And it's a good-sized tree, and I have trimmed that back, and Verna has trimmed on it back quite a bit. But it's still a big tree, and that variety doesn't fruit real heavy, but it fruits dependably. But it's a big tree, and it's a problem to pick. This is another cherry, and it's a similar situation. But you can see maybe in the top some little tiny fruit, that's late bloom, and some of these other fruit that are nearing maturity but not ready yet, that is an earlier bloom.
Now, when you cut back trees, other than just cutting the height, if you cut them in, does that also affect the fruit as well, or?
Well, they need sunlight to get good leaf growth. So if trees are growing too close together, it shades the sides out, and all you get is a fruit in the top, with a few exceptions. Now, Paul, in the background here is a huge tree. That's one of the largest ones I have. It's a variety I call Dupree. It fruits early. I think it fruits good enough, production enough for its size, but it's not known as a heavy producing tree, and it grows really giant size. And that's one I have got to cut back so much that when I cut it back, I don't expect to get fruit for 2 more years on it.
Wow.
And that's why I have hesitated to cut it back, because while it is big, we've been able to manage to get fruit from inside up in the top and still have fruit variety of that variety. But it is so hard to get anymore that when I cut it back, I know I'm losing a couple of years crop of fruit.
You're talking about width and length cutting it back?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. From another angle, if you saw, there's about a 18 or maybe 16-foot ladder leaning up in there that we used to get started climbing to go up in the tree to pick. And it's just labor intensive, and who's going to pay us for what our time is worth when it comes to picking like that?
And you planted every tree here, right?
No, my dad had this grove originally planted when I was in school, about 13, 14 years old. Now, I don't know, you can see here on the ground, I haven't picked up under here, those little green fruit around here.
Yes.
That's a honeykiss that were on this tree.
Wow, look at that honeykiss tree, wow.
There's still a lot of fruit on there, but those are wasted. They'll never be good unless you're using them for pickles.
How old is this honeykiss tree?
Well, these are all planted at the same time, but the grafting was done at different times.
Got it.
I don't keep a record of what year I grafted each tree.
On your property here, is there any variety that's original, or everything was grafted on to kits and kins?
Originally, everything that was planted was already budded trees of the Kent variety.
Okay.
And in about 1970, I grafted all of them over to the Kit variety, K-E-I-T-T. And then when it came to be more my grove and I wanted to have a diversity of variety, I started top working so that I've got maybe 40 different varieties on a smaller area here. And it's from there that I have the varieties to sell in season. And it extends my season from earlier to later in the year. And it certainly provides different varieties for people that have different tastes of mangoes. I just never have enough fruit for the demand, and that's why I hesitate to advertise very much. I don't want people to be disappointed and come here thinking they're going to load up with bushels of mangoes, and it's only maybe a dozen that they feel impressed to get.
What's some of your favorite varieties that are out now?
I try to keep ahead of things, and I might mention some names of fruit.
All time. What's your top 3 all time?
Well, I remember well the Edward as a very good early mango. Yet I only have 1 tree of Edward, and I've never had more than 3 fruit ever in a season of that. The closest thing to it is one I call Seacrest. My brother calls it, and it's the one from his planting originated. He calls it
Triple Sec?
Triple Sec, yeah, because it's so sweet and good. I would mention Kit, but Kit has begun to have so much of that black splitting problem that I'm been decreasing that quantity. But we liked it because it was so big for the size seed, and it properly mature and picked right. It is a very good mango to cut up for drying or freezing and saving. I like the Zill mango simply because I guess I grew up eating it, and I'm partial to its flavor, and it's so free of fiber that you can twist it out and spoon it nice. Now, I have a variety that I'm hoping to have more in production of that I call Beatrice. That is one of my favorite, but who can describe in words the flavor of a mango? Those you just have to taste it and see. So that's why I'm making more trees of that kind. But I'm disappointed in how many fruit are going to be available this year for people to see. But I have budded some trees that I will sell to people who want it. But I want them to sample the fruit first and know if they want it or not, because not everybody has the same taste, you know.
Sure. And everybody needs to know that you have a wonderful book that describes the history of many of these varieties. It's excellent.
Yeah, I call it Maturing with Mangoes by Walter Zill.
Excellent. And I'm going to put a link below this video. Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon.
Yeah, I'll put a link below the video. I promise anyone who's interested in mangoes, this book is excellent. And I love it. Good job.
Little personal stories in there, and the history of some, and some instructions on how to do your own grafting.
It's a great
budding. Book. And there's a picture of my wife on the front of it. That anyway.
Yes.
Let's see what I was going to show you out here. A mango tree that I grafted a few years ago, and haven't gotten enough fruit from it yet because it's just been growing to get up into some balance with the root system that it's on. This big tree here, I cut it back a few years ago. This is what I call seacrest, or that triple sec. There's no fruit seen on it. There's maybe a dozen fruit on the one side, but it bloomed heavy, but nothing set. I'm not going to speculate why, unless it was that I put too much fertilizer out there. See, here's some the wind blew down. They just blew them down this afternoon. Now that's the shape and size when they normally would ripen. And yet I wouldn't want to put this out for sale because I've seen too many like this spoil around the stem end before they ripen. And I don't want people's money unless they got fruit that are really sweet and good. Because that's a common question people ask. Are they sweet? And if they haven't been on the tree long enough, there's no way they're going to be sweet enough to satisfy someone. Well, here. This is a different story. That Beatrice, I mentioned Beatrice. This is a grafted of Beatrice, and this also on a rootstock here. I was hoping to get fruit on it this season, but I think it's got too much shade to bloom. The original tree is over that way. It's got some fruit on it, but they're all really small fruit yet. It was all late bloom because the early bloom has all been blown off.
Do you have any idea what Beatrice is?
No, I don't know what it originates from. If I were guessing, no, I shouldn't guess, because it grew up among a group of mango plants that grew up from where we threw our wastes. And we eat a lot of different varieties, and I haven't been like my brother in detailing where each fruit came from and where it was planted. Just had too many other things on my mind. We decide if it's worth keeping when it fruits. And that one had a particular flavor that struck me as being rather special. And a lot of people that I shared it with thought it was extremely good too. And the fruit were uniform in size, not brightly colored really. But you could tell when the green fruit on the tree turned enough change in color that it's safe to pick them and know that they will ripen good. Let's go this way and see something. This tree that I'm pointing to here was a kit that was very productive, but I didn't want any more kit. I cut it back over a period of about 2 or 3 years and grafted another variety, CAC, whatever that stands for, I'm not sure. I've heard it, CAC.
Yes.
It's going to have a few fruit this year. It did previous years, but only just a few fruit, and it's not enough fruit to be worth the space that it occupies compared with some others. Now, if you look just to the right, this tree over here, and you can see a lot of fruit on it. They're smaller fruit, although there's some that are sizing up here. This happens to be from a tree I was shown in North Boynton in someone's yard. I don't know what its origin is, but the person brought some fruit by one season that were nice big fruit. And I asked where he got them from. He said, "Oh, from my yard." So I went and checked it out. The tree was loaded with fruit. I've been there other years and it loaded up with fruit. So I got graftwood of it and put it on here with his permission. And it's showing its stuff. And you know, when I see mango varieties that regularly fruit so good as that, I'm willing to cut off varieties that don't fruit so good to have those that are productive.
Yeah, and what did you name that one, or does it have a name?
Well, his mother's name was Shirley, so I told him I would ask him what I should call it. He said, "Well, call it Shirley." So I call it Shirley. It's not written in my book, but that's one I call Shirley. I wouldn't say that it is the one that tickles my taste bud the best, but I would certainly rather have some mangoes to eat that are good mangoes, even if they're not maybe the fanciest for my taste.
Sure.
And another thing, when a person puts up mangoes, either canning them or freezing them and thaws them out later, no matter how good it was to begin with, they lose all those fine flavors and they all end up with just a mango taste. So it's more important to have a volume of fruit to eat than it is to have a few that just tickle your taste for once in a while. What else can I say on that subject?
That's a good point.
This stump here, it's a very good mango, but it has a tendency of not bearing very good, and I was threatened to just get it out of there because we need space to be able to get the fruit on the tree behind it, which is one that named for my brother, Gary. Now that's a mango that has a taste that really tickles some people's taste bud and they love it, and we never have enough fruit of it. And to make sure I had access to it and to encourage more sunlight around it, I decided to take this stump out.
What was that stump? Was it a seedling or something?
No, it was a grafted tree, one of Gary's. I think I won't mention what it was. It's probably one that he will keep in production. In fact, I had actually dug all around it, but I had not cut off the lateral roots nor the taproot. I might mention that when I really take out a tree, I dig around it, I cut off the lateral roots, dig a big enough hole so I can cut the taproot off down below with an axe, and it's not coming back. But I never let that seedling come to fruiting, so I never knew what that seedling was. I just grafted onto it one that Gary had that he liked very much, and I liked it too. But he told me it's just not very productive, and it has proven not to be very productive, yet I didn't want to destroy it entirely.
So in this case, you got to make a choice which variety you like better, and also the other factors involved. Now, this one that you cut here, I know it's not getting enough shade, but can you grow it back and leave it short now, or once it's big, it's hard to do that?
It'll come out and grow out, and I would have a source of budwood if for some reason I wanted to make plants of it. Now, right over you, looking up there real tall.
Yep.
And it's from this seedling that's growing right up here. This is a seedling that naturally grew up here where we had other seedlings grow up. But when it has fruited, it was very early, very colorful, and for a mango, it was a good typical mango. It's not very big, but I didn't have the heart to cut it out. It's right beside the railroad here where Bright Line goes through, and I decided I'm just going to call it Bright Bite. It's a small mango. You get a bite of fruit, and it's brightly colored. It's pretty good tasting, but This year it doesn't fruit very much, but other years it has fruited very heavily. And
Bright bite.
bright bite, I'd say. It's not that special, but I don't have the heart to destroy it.
Sure.
So I'm letting it grow up. There's another one behind it that fruited last year. It didn't bloom this year. That it really got my interest because it bloomed one bloom stem, and on it set 5 fruit, or was it 4 fruit? It was 4 fruits. It had more to begin with, but eventually 4 stuck on there and reached development. And it was proved to be a polyembryonic variety that I've never seen before. It was a nice reddish color, not too fibrous, good mango. And because of its red color, I decided I'm just going to call it Rufus. So that's one I call Rufus. It's just
Rufus.
Personal conversation. It's not in the book. It's not on the internet unless somebody uses that name on some other mango.
Yeah.
It did not bloom this year, but I'm saving it, hoping it'll bloom next year.
So these are just mango seeds you threw in this area. You have no idea what these seedlings are from, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This is a grafted tree, though. A budded tree that I put. It's one of Gary's seedlings that I wanted to try here. It has not fruited. It hasn't had a chance in too many other trees around it. And this is another one. He was looking for slower growing varieties that were more compact. And it has proven to be that way. I happen to kind of like mangoes that grow a little faster, I guess.
Yeah. Now, how long from the time you cut a tree like that and put a graft on before it might get some mangoes? Does it depend on many other factors?
Yes, it depends on a lot of things. Had this been out in the sun, good sunlight all around it, and enough water and fertilizer, right, I would have gotten fruit within 2 years. But as it is, it's been closer to probably 15 years that I put that on there, and it's been in a handicapped situation. At least I've kept the variety here in case I want it.
Sure. And what about the seedlings? So how long can you expect to get fruit from a seedling, or once again, does it depend on the factors the same way?
There's a lot of factors that I can't really speculate on it. They say on an average 7 to 10 years. I've heard some people argue that they got fruit from their seedling tree within 3 years. And come to find out, they planted a tree that was already 2 or 3 years old before they started counting their 3 years on it. And I say 7 to 10 years from the time the seed is planted. And I think that's a fairly average time.
Okay. Okay.
So if a person has patience to let their seedling go ahead and fruit, then they may have something they want to keep. If they don't, cut it off and graft it onto graft a variety that is proven onto it. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book, to give people an idea of what they can do if they got enough patience planting a seed, when it may fruit, and if they don't like it, what they can do with cutting it off and grafting another variety onto it.
Wonderful. That's great. This is wonderful information here. And there you got another seedling here, or something grafted?
Well, yes, that's growing up in the fence. It has not fruited yet. I cut off 3 or 4 trees here just year before last that had fruited, and nothing special at all.
Sure.
See, the wind blew these down. These are some little bright bite, but they're not mature
Right,
yet.
right.
See here. Just today. The wind blew these out of the top today.
Wow.
And they haven't got their full size. They're small fruit, but they still would have been
Bigger than that.
yeah, considerably bigger than that, and color up quite brightly. Okay. So I just don't even bother to bring them up anymore. This one is more than getting closer to the normal size for bright bite, but it still won't be a sweet taste and when it ripens.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with all of us here, and for your book and everything you do.
For what it might be worth, I get graft wood from trees that I want to prove out a little more. And the major part of this tree that's growing out here is a start of a variety that originated in Winter Park up near Orlando area. And I'm not sure if it's going to be worthwhile to put into production, but the interesting thing with it was the seed kernel never seemed to develop inside of the husk. So it left the husk very thin, and the pulp around it then would be the major weight of the fruit. So if a person is looking for weight of pulp to be a higher percentage, when they're spending their money by weight, they like to get more pulp for weight compared to the amount of seed. And it had a very, very thin seed in it. So I tried the variety here. I don't know how it's going to be this growing in this locality, but this year it had two little blooms come out on it. One set of bloom. Here has two fruit on it, and there's another bloom spike that came out up there that's got one fruit on it.
Wow.
Now, all things considered, if you get two spikes of bloom and you end up with 3 fruit, that's a very high percentage. I'm anxious to see if in
So
another
how long has
year
it been
how
here
it
now?
goes. It's been 3 years.
And is there a name to that or no?
I'd rather not mention it
Okay.
this time.
Okay.
It would be the name of the person's property and where it originated. But it's not a
Okay.
name common among mangoes yet.
Okay.
Let me see. This, again, you see these fruit on the ground?
Yep.
They're 2 weeks from being on the tree long enough to be sweet. This is one we call Edgar.
Edgar, yes.
Edgar. It's a very productive and good mango.
Yeah, I got one of those.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's a shame how much is wasted from the wind. This. Now let's look at it from this angle. Watch your step here so you don't step on this squash vine. But maybe you can see up through there with the sky in the background, some of those little fruit.
Yep.
That's the beatrice on the original beatrice tree.
Oh, wow.
And right next to it, the tree with a little green ribbon on it, I'll go stand beside it, is another seedling. And this year is the first year that it is fruiting. It has some fruit forming, early bloom, and some later bloom. So production, it looks really promising. But this was from where we had discarded seeds, and I cut out 2 other varieties that fruited here and were inferior. But I'm anxious to see for the first time when these fruit mature. It looks like, yeah, the wind knocked one of those off. Now this one I'll save in the house and see what this seedling is. I'll designate it as a
And those trees are pretty close.
I'll call this a 2022 because this is the first year I'm getting fruit from it. But this is the beatrice. For a long time I was just referring to it as 17, meaning 2017 was the year when it first fruited. And they're the same age. There have been other trees around here that fruited earlier, but they're gone. So even in the same environment, they all don't mature at the same time. It's a lot of variation there.
5-year difference, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
same area. And this tree isn't so big, but a few years ago, It fruited, and the fruit was definitely inferior, not worth keeping. But I used it to graft something else on. This is a variety, it has not fruited yet, but it had exceptionally large leaves. And I want to see what the fruit might be. Where it originated, it was in the way too much, so I just took graft from it and put over here and destroyed the original tree of it. But it hasn't fruited yet. And these limbs of the rootstock, I put another variety on it to try and save it, because where that tree was growing is I can't leave it there. It grew too big. I didn't want to destroy it, but it was one of those varieties that would not fruit regularly. It was give you a few fruit every 2 or 3 years, you know. Wasn't worth the space. Here's Duncan. The Duncan. They were going to be ripe in a few weeks, and there are a lot of them on the ground now because of the wind.
Okay, give us your phone number again, so people, if they want to come here to see what's in season and when it's coming in season, to the best of your knowledge, based on the factors, what number can they contact you at for your address?
It's 561-737-9419.
Wonderful.
737-9419. And hope you can get through, or at least you can leave a message.
All right.
If our machine works right.
And I'm going to put the link below this video for your book from Amazon. I highly recommend everyone get that.
Yeah, Maturing with Mangoes by Walter Zill. It has a picture of my wife, Verna, on the front of it.
Yes, it's excellent. Thank you again.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul.
All right, everybody. That was Walter Zill. His number's below. The link to the Amazon to get his book is below. If you love mangoes, this is a book you need to get. It's absolutely just informative, and if you have a passion for mangoes like I do, that's something you want to get. And remember, he has mangoes during season, so go out there, but call the number first to get his address and make sure he has mangoes in season. And keep growing, everybody. I put your comments and questions below, and if you have questions, put them below so next time I go to Zill's, I'll ask him. Until then, everybody, have a great day. Keep growing.